Today is the last sermon in Genesis for the fall. We have a little bit more that we'll do in the spring, and then we'll have basically worked through the whole book of Genesis. Not every single verse and chapter, but most of them. And so today, today we're wrapping up for the fall. Sermon title is Chosen. When I think of the word chosen or choose, I have kind of mixed feelings about that because, I like the word chosen when I'm the one chosen, and I don't like it when I'm not. So for instance, when I was fourth grade, Clash of the Titans. Remember Clash of the Titans came out like 1982? And I wanted to see that movie so bad. And the movie theater, we lived in Saugus, California, kind of up near Magic Mountain at that time. And there was a double feature at the movie theater of Clash of the Titans and Dragon Slayer. Anybody remember Dragon Slayer? That's not as popular or memorable, but it was kind of fun. Anyway, so double feature. We begged, my brother and I, who was first grade, we begged our parents to take us to that movie, and they did. They said, okay, we'll go see Clash of the Titans and Dragon Slayer. So we went, so probably like a 7 o'clock start time, something like that for Clash of the Titans. That was the first one. Awesome, loved it, so cool, release the Kraken and all that, right? And the movie was over, and then, there's a little bit of time between that and the second movie. They don't even do double features anymore, so it's like talking about ancient times, right? Things, remnants of an old era. So there was some time in between, and my mom and dad made a decision. My younger brother, who was first grade, so he's 7 years old, they're like, and he's getting kind of tired. They're like, we're going to take Johnny home. I don't call him Johnny anymore. It's John. But anyway, we're going to take Johnny home. And he was kind of sad at first, but he was also pretty worn out. And Clash of the Titans is a pretty, intense movie for a first grader. And so it was time. So he didn't put up too much of a fight. And so my mom and my brother went home. But I was chosen to stay with Dad and watch Dragon Slayer. Right? 4 hours of giant monsters, meaning 2 movies, right? 4 hours. Anyway, and so it was like great. I mean, I felt a little bit bad for my brother, but again, he was okay. It didn't traumatize him or anything. But I was so happy I got to stay. I was chosen to stay. So I love being chosen, right? That's the good side of being chosen. Then there's sort of the other side. What comes to mind for me on the downside of being chosen is elementary school, recess, where you're all lined up on the blacktop, and the 2 most popular kids are the team captains for kickball, and they pick their players, and I was not particularly big, and I was not particularly athletic, and so I wasn't usually the last person picked, but I was like one of the last 3 or 4 usually. I'm like, I hate this, right? Because I was not the one chosen. So we have these mixed feelings in terms of, right, chosenness or choosing. And it often has to do with whether we're the ones chosen or not. Sometimes there's also an unfairness. Like, how come that person got chosen and not me, The unfairness could go the other way. How come I got chosen and not them, And sometimes we get chosen for things that maybe we don't want to get chosen for. Like when Mom and Dad chose me to do the dishes, I did not like that, right? Right? So all kinds of mixed feelings when it comes to this idea of being chosen. And in the story that we're looking at today, a lot of mixed feelings, once again, in regard to this idea of being chosen. We're continuing today the story of Jacob and Esau, and we're actually going to conclude the story of Jacob and Esau and their relationship today. If you remember last week, let me just do a quick little review. Last week was the beginning of their story. Isaac, the son of Abraham, had 2 sons, these twins, and while they were inside Rebekah's womb, they jostled each other, and Rebekah cried out, "Why is this happening to me?" And God says, well, there are 2 nations inside of you, and they're hostile towards one another, and they are fighting each other. It says that one will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger, right? The older will serve the younger. And we learned a big word last week, primogeniture, which is the practice of the oldest son or the oldest child getting the entire inheritance, and everyone, all the other kids just kind of getting the scraps. So there's this it's like scandalous, right? Because it was unthinkable, right? The overturning or the reversal of this practice of primogeniture, it is not right. The older child should get everything, right? So the babies are born. Esau is born first, and Jacob is born second, and it says that he was grasping Esau's heel as Esau was being born, like, no, let me out first. I want to be born first. But he's not. They name him Jacob because Jacob means grasps the heel. He grasps the heel, which is an idiom for, anybody remember? Deceiving, right? To grasp the heel in Old Hebrew meant to deceive. So Jacob literally means the deceiver. He's a deceiver. And then comes the bargain when they're young men. Esau was a man of the country. He loved to go out hunting. He went out for weeks in the open country, brought back all kinds of good meat for the family, but he's exhausted. So one day he comes home from hunting, and Jacob liked to stay home in the tents. He liked to cook. And so Esau comes home. He says to Jacob, I'm so hungry. I'm starving. Jacob, give me some of that stew that you're making. Jacob says, sure, I'll give you some stew if you give me your birthright. Right? In other words, the right of the firstborn child, and everything that goes with that. And Esau says, yeah, whatever, if I'm so hungry I could die, what good is the birthright to me if I die? Just give me some of that stew. And Jacob says, swear to me first. And Esau says, I swear it, I don't care, just give me some stew. And so Jacob gives him the stew, and Esau gives Jacob the birthright. And the last line of that story is, so Esau despised his birthright, right? He treated as worthless the thing that was most valuable in his life. But also Jacob was not a good guy. He took advantage of his brother. Esau might have been a little bit slow, and Jacob's like, I can do something with that, right? And so he takes advantage of Esau, and he gets Esau to give him his birthright. Okay, now we're going to move to the next story of Jacob and Esau, and it does not get better. It does not get better. In fact, it gets almost kind of worse. This is Genesis 27, verses 1 to 41. So I'm going to read to you just the whole story. In this story, he doesn't steal Esau's birthright, he steals Esau's blessing, the blessing of their father Isaac, which was intended for Esau. So here's what happens. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, my son. Here I am, he answered. Isaac said, I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your equipment, your quiver and bow, and go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me, so that I may give you my blessing before I die. Now, Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. And there was one line in last week's story where it said, now Isaac loved Esau and Rebekah loved Jacob, right? So there was some favoritism going on, and you're going to see this very unhealthy dynamic come out here. Now, Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now, my son, listen carefully to what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, so I can prepare some tasty food for your father just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat, so that he may give you his blessing before he dies. Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, but my brother Esau is a hairy man, while I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would call down a curse on myself rather than a blessing. His mother said to him, my son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me. So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her older son, which she had in the house, and put them on her younger son Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck and the goat skins. Then she handed to her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread she had made. He went to his father and said, "My father." "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing." Isaac asked his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" Isaac's no idiot. "The Lord your God gave me success," he replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not." Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau," right? Because he had the goat skins on his hands and his neck, make him feel hairy. He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he proceeded to bless him. "Are you really my son Esau?" he asked. "I am," he replied. Then he said, "My son, bring me some of your game to eat, so that I may give you my blessing." Jacob brought it to him, and he ate. And he brought some wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." So he went to him and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." After Isaac finished blessing him, and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, "My father, please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing." His father Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" "I am your son," he answered, "your firstborn, Esau." Isaac trembled violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed." When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, "Bless me too, my father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing." Esau said, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob, deceiver? This is the second time he has taken advantage of me. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing." Then he asked, "Haven't you reserved any blessing for me?" Isaac answered Esau, "I have made him lord over you, and have made all his relatives his servants. And I have sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father." Then Esau wept aloud. His father Isaac answered him, "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck." Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are near. then I will kill my brother Jacob. Woo. Okay. This is a heavy, heavy story, right? When you think about Jacob and Rebekah, what kind of feelings do they evoke in you in light of this story? Good? Probably not. Right? Not good. Right? Who's the bad guy in this story? It's Jacob. Jacob, the chosen one, is the bad guy in this story. Kind of like last week. This is another one of those stories where last week there was a quote from Walter Brueggemann, Old Testament theologian, and he said something like, the narrative is not edifying in any conventional religious or moral sense, right? Same with this one. There really isn't anything edifying in this story. Right? Our sympathies in this story lie with who? With Esau and with Isaac, right? They're the ones who were duped. They're the ones who were taken advantage of. Esau is the one who's been sidelined. Why? Because Jacob deceived his father and stole Esau's blessing, right? Now, we might say, how come Isaac couldn't just give Esau a blessing too? And that has to do, I think, with the way that they thought about blessing in ways that are maybe different than we think about blessing today. Like we think, well, God is infinite. He can give as many blessings as he wants, and why can't I bless all of my children, right? And I think in that time, they thought of blessing as something that was a little bit more finite. I've got one blessing, and who am I going to give it to? And the oldest son, right, Esau, was the intended one for the blessing. But Jacob took Esau's blessing. Right? Now, the irony in this story is that, yes, Jacob took Esau's blessing, but remember what Esau says at the very end? He says, when the time of mourning in other words, my father's going to die soon, and when my father dies, I will hunt Jacob down and I will kill him. And so Jacob becomes a fugitive after this. In fact, the next few verses, Rebekah says to Jacob, hey, Jacob, you need to get all your things and you need to go because Esau's after you. He wants to kill you because of this. And for the next decades, their families grow, their herds and flocks grow. And so, they become these large encampments and communities of people, but constantly Jacob is just trying to stay one step ahead of Esau for decades, right? And so this blessing that he got, yes, he got the blessing, but it became a burden for Jacob. So there's this weird, it's hard to understand really what's going on here in some ways. Yes, Jacob was the one that God intended to receive the blessing because he said the older will serve the younger. He's the one. Just as God chose Abraham, and then God said the blessing will go through Isaac, and then God said the blessing will go through Jacob, and his descendants will be the 12 tribes of Israel, and it is through that nation that all peoples on earth will be blessed. But the way Jacob gets it, right, is so underhanded, and I don't like it, right? I don't like it. Some things maybe to think about in regard to this story. One is that the story doesn't actually condone any of the things that any of the characters do. It just says, here's what happened, right? This is a very dysfunctional family, right? Right? The parents play favorites with their kids. The brothers don't trust each other, and Jacob especially is probably the most dysfunctional one of all. But then his mother Rebekah is the co-conspirator in this whole thing, right? And acts against her other son Esau. This is a messed up family. And yet, this is part of the story of the people of God, right? I love that the Bible doesn't try to make things easy for us, which is one of the reasons I think the Bible makes it a little bit more, but let's say believable, in the sense that, like, okay, if they were trying to convince people, you need to believe all these things and get all your, right? Well, we're going to make it as easy to absorb this story as possible. The Bible does not make this story easy to absorb, right? It says this is hard to understand. And so there's no justification in the story of anyone's behavior, right? If we were to take this story as a moral lesson, I mean, what are the lessons we would have to take from this? We'd have to say, well, parents, play favorites with your kids, right? Siblings, deceive each other to get whatever you can, right? Those are not the kinds of things that, I mean, we know this. When you look at the whole Bible, those are not the things that the Bible wants to teach us, but this is what happened in this story. What we don't want to take from this either is that, well, look, God can use my bad behavior and bring something good out of it in the end, right? It's not to justify the bad things that I do. I can do these bad things because, you know what? God has chosen me. and it's okay, right? Unfortunately, you read the news and that kind of thing happens quite a bit, right? That's not the point of this story. And, maybe the story doesn't even really have a point, right? It's just the story. This is what happened. And maybe, again, it's just a reminder that God doesn't play by our rules. We think that things should unfold certain ways. Jacob should get what's coming to him, and in some ways he does. In some ways he does, because his life is not easy. It's not like he goes through life with joy and peace and, la la la. Right? It's not like that. It's like, oh my gosh, Esau's coming, right? And he's on the run constantly. And he gets deceived actually by his uncle at one point in the story. So Jacob's life is not easy after this. But there's this sense, right, that the way things unfold are not the way things should unfold, and yet that's the way things unfold sometimes, right? That's kind of how the world is. And Jacob is still the chosen one. Jacob is still the one through whom God said, he will be the father of the nation through whom I will bless the world, even though he gets it in this really awful, terrible way. Here's what I appreciate about this story and others like it, like the one we looked at last week. If God can work through someone like Jacob, then he can certainly work through someone like me, right? Maybe I'm being too easy on myself, but I don't think I'm as bad as Jacob was. And probably neither are you, right? Jacob was pretty bad. And yet God said, I'm going to work through him. And if God can work through someone like Jacob, God can certainly work through someone like me. Sometimes we think, in order for God to work through me, or in order for God to choose me, right, I have to be good enough. I have to be spiritual enough. I have to be religious enough. I have to be Christian enough. I have to be whatever enough, right? Moral enough. And God says this story is a reminder that no, that's not the criteria, right? The criteria is just, I want to work through you to bring good things into the world, right? And we'll work on everything else later. And there are, as we're going to look at more Jacob's story in the spring, and God does do some things in his life. But he certainly at this point, he's not good enough by our standards. He's not good enough to be the father of the people of God. But God says, yeah, but I'm choosing you anyway. I'm choosing you anyway. I think it was Walter Brueggemann, again, Old Testament theologian, who said something like, the story doesn't try to explain anything. It just invites us to marvel. Like, wow, amazing, crazy, wild. How is that possible? And so I don't have any super easy answers for you today as far as that goes. You might be thinking of yourself, in terms of, that's wonderful that God can choose to work through me now, that I don't have to be perfect, that I don't need to become more something in order for God to work through me. We might also be thinking of other people, be like, what, wants to do or could do something through that person, right? That's uncomfortable. So there's not any easy answers with this story. And part of following, I have so many mixed feelings about this. So there's a part of me that's just like, I don't know. Here's the story. This is what, but isn't it amazing that God can work through me? That God can work through me. And God says, we'll work on everything as we go. And that's what God does do with Jacob. They work on a lot of stuff as they go. Okay. I will say that the story has a happy ending. And so I'm going to share with you the end of the story of Jacob and Esau. And so we're actually jumping ahead, like 6 chapters in the story. The first few passages we look at in the spring actually happened before what we're going to look at now. So kind of while Jacob is on the run. So here's how the story ends. This is in Genesis chapter 33. Jacob has been on the run for, I don't know exactly how long, but decades. He's got children now, right? And they're beginning to grow up. And so 20 years, 30 years, he's on the run. But he also is growing. He's becoming a little bit more mature. He's beginning to see, I can't do this forever. And so finally he comes to a decision. He says, I'm going to let Esau catch up with me. And so he does. And so Esau gets closer and closer and closer. And Esau, has like an army at this point in his life. Neither of the sons have done poorly in terms of like growing as a family and growing in, herds and flocks and servants and all of this, right? So Esau gets closer, and Jacob says, I need to appease him. And so he sends gifts to Esau, herds and flocks and camels, right? Day after day after day. Esau gets closer, closer, closer. Finally, the day comes that Jacob and Esau will meet again after all these years. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and his 2 female servants. He put the female, Leah and Rachel are his wives, he put the female servants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. And yes, that's Joseph of the Technicolor Dreamcoat. We'll learn more about him next year. He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and the children. "Who are these with you?" he asked. Jacob answered, "They are the children God has graciously given your servant." Isn't it amazing? He calls himself Esau's servant, right? And there's this reversal because now he's grown into who he was meant to be. Then the female servants and their children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. And last of all came Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. Esau asked, "What's the meaning of all these flocks and herds I met?" "To find favor in your eyes, my lord," he said. But Esau said, "I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." "No, please," said Jacob. "If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God. Now that you have received me favorably, please accept the present that was brought to you. For God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need." And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. I am glad it has a happy ending. Right? And that's hopeful, right? That gives me hope that there can be reconciliation even after a really bad relationship like Jacob and Esau had. God can bring life out of death, is another way of thinking about this. So, it can be hard for us to believe that God can do good things through us, great things even. And when I say great, I don't necessarily mean like world-renowned things. Maybe they could be, but just great things for our family, for our kids, right? For our spouses, for our parents, loving them, caring for them, being who we were meant to be, right? As people of light and love and goodness, right? Those who reflect the love of Jesus in the world. We're called to participate with God in the healing of the world, and God doesn't have to wait for us to get good enough to do that, right? So, as we close, I'm going to invite you two things. First, just believe that God can work through you, right? It is possible. If God can work through someone like Jacob, God can certainly work through someone like you and me. If God can use Jacob to be the source of blessing for the world, then God can certainly bring blessing into the world through you and me. So, and if it's hard to believe it, just say, God, help me to believe this. I know this is hard to believe, but help me to believe that you can do good things through me. So that's the first thing. Second thing is when God wants to work through you, say yes. You know, and that doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything, right? Sometimes you get an invitation to do something good, and that might not be the thing, and that requires some discernment and reflection. But sometimes it is the thing, and sometimes you know it. You're like, oh, that feels like the right thing, but that's scary. That's outside my comfort zone, right? Whatever that might be. Say yes when those times come, when you feel like, yeah, I think this is what God is calling me to do, right? Say yes. Believe that God can work through you, and when God says, this is what I want to do through you, right? Let's become people who say yes to that. I'm grateful that Jesus said yes when God sent him, his son, God incarnate into the world. And the Father said to the Son, this is going to be hard and difficult, but it will bring healing and wholeness into the world. It will reconcile the world to me, right? And it's amazing. I mean, when you think about the crucifixion, to think that something good came out of that, right? And maybe you've experienced it even in your own life, right? That sometimes good things come out of the hardest, most painful things in our lives. This is the ultimate example of that. God said, I want to bring the ultimate good into the world, and it's going to come through a really painful, difficult experience. And Jesus did it. And then he said, come to me, right? Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, maybe people like Jacob. I'll give you rest. I'll give you rest. And so I want you to know that you are invited to come to this table. You are invited to believe that God can work through you, that God wants to do good things in the world through you, bring blessing into the world through you, and also for you to experience the goodness and the blessing of God. That's what God wants for you. My hope is that as you come to this table to experience the goodness of God, that you will get a taste of that today, right? The bread and the cup. This is the goodness of God. This is the love of God, and you are invited to come to this table.